What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's transfer tips ahead of game week 21. We still don't have double game week confirmation, but I'm going to kind of talk around it as we go through some of these players that are being transferred out or transferred in. Are people making a mistake? What should you be thinking about? That kind of stuff. If you do enjoy it, give it a like and hit that subscribe button. I just wanted to say thank you. Today is exactly 5 years since I first uploaded an FPL video, the 30th of December 2016. I might try and do a stream later if I can, but if I can't, I just wanted to say thank you in this one. The support over those 5 years has been incredible. This season's been absolutely ridiculous. This is now my full-time job. I know I talked about all this on the Q&A recently, but a big thank you. Thank you very much. 5 years, incredible, but we've still got to talk about game week 21, so let's jump into it. All right, so it's not that often that Mohamed Salah makes it onto these videos, right? Because you just buy him and you keep him and you captain him most weeks, and that's FPL. It's that easy. But obviously, people are starting to sell him. 71,500 transfers out already, and we've still got a few more days to go until the deadline. And obviously, Chelsea away, sometimes a difficult fixture, but also African Cup of Nations is happening. So let's quickly talk about that. So the dates I've got up on screen, or on my other screen, 9th of January until February 6th. Right, so most African Cup of Nations players that are going away for it, are able to play game week 21, and then they're going to go and meet up with the national side. And then obviously, depending on how far they get through, will depend on how long they stay. Now, Egypt are one of the favourites to win it, so it is possible that Salah will stay right till the end. We'll have to see what happens. It's football, anything can happen. But the 6th of February is when it ends, right? So that'll be when the final is. Now, if we look on the FPL screen, right? So if I come back to this week, so they're going to play this week, then there's not a game week deadline for 2 more weeks, unless things change, of course, but 2 more weeks. And then you got another one a week later. So they're going to miss probably 2 games for sure, like 2 game weeks. Then there's another little break coming up after that. So the next deadline is not till the 8th of February, which is 2 days after the final. Now, if Salah got to the final, it'd be very surprising if he then played for Liverpool 2 days later. So I think the max game weeks they're probably going to miss out is 3. There is a possibility to miss game week 25 as well if they get through to the final, because for the 8th of February for game week 24 is a midweek fixture, and so the next deadline is only 4 days later. So if we come back to this, I think he's definitely going to miss 22 and 23. He may miss 24 as well. There's an outside possibility of missing 25, but if he's back for that and he's fit, and bearing in mind Liverpool are not going to want to be without him for too long, same with Mane, then you probably want him back for Burnley away and Norwich at home. They are perfect captaincy candidates, or he is a perfect captaincy candidate, depending on what condition he comes back from African Cup of Nations, right? So it probably is worth selling him. He's too much money to have on our bench, unless it looks like he's going to get knocked out early and be straight back. I think we definitely have to look at selling him. The big question is, should we sell him this week? Now, I think sometimes some FPL managers can swing too far one way, right? From one side to the other. So if he'd scored that penalty against Leicester, people would be talking about him as a captaincy opportunity this week. And I'm sure a lot of people still are, by the way. But now because he's missed the penalty, it's like, okay, well, maybe I'll just sell him and get Son in. For what it's worth, I did talk a few weeks ago or game weeks ago, I should say, it's only days really, about possibly captaining Son instead of Salah in this game week as well. I don't think that's a bad idea at all. And without sitting on the fence too much, this is all going to depend on your team. If you've got other transfers to make instead, let's say you were relying on Reece James, for example, and now he's injured and he's probably going to miss game week 21, and you've got to transfer him out instead, then there's no harm in keeping Salah against Chelsea. Chelsea have got injury problems right now. Kovacic and Kante haven't played a huge amount of minutes recently. We've seen the last few games, one's on the bench, one plays, and then the other one gets subbed on. We've seen that a few times recently. Last night, Reece James started because he was up against Lamptey. Well, guess what? Up against Salah is pretty difficult as well. Marcus Alonso is now going to have to contend with that. So I don't think, like, as a non-Salah owner, I'm still worried this week that he's going to get a big score. He scored against Chelsea in the reverse fixture, although I will say Liverpool weren't great in that game, considering Chelsea were down to 10 men for so long. But this game, I think Chelsea have just got some problems, and Liverpool don't have as many problems, so I think they'll be fine. I don't think I would go out of my way to sell him this week, but I do see the appeal of Son. If you had to make a different transfer and captain Salah this week, there's nothing wrong with that at all. He's still one of the best captaincy options, and then obviously you look to sell him because he's going to miss game week 22 when Liverpool could have a double game week, and so he's not needed there. It's a lot of money. You could spread it around a little bit. Maybe it is Son that you go to. But I don't think you have to make this transfer that week. If you want to do Salah to Son, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you've got other priorities, just keep Salah one more week. Yes, he missed a penalty. On another day, he scores that. Liverpool go on to score a few more. And maybe he comes away with a double-digit haul. That's football. Sometimes it happens. It sucks. But you've got to reassess. And this week is a good fixture still. Okay, so for anyone that watched the game last night, obviously Reece James came off after 27 minutes. Really unfortunate. I think we'll get onto the injury in just a second. But I think... you can consider yourself a little bit unlucky if you miss kind of the 50-odd points in 4 game weeks and you've had him since where he's hardly got anything. That just happens sometimes. I think really what would have been fair was to have those points more evenly spread. So maybe he gets like 30 points and you think, right, it's time to bring him in. Then he gets another 20, 25. And okay, it's not quite as much, but you're still satisfied. The way Reece James got his points was kind of pretty crazy. Loads and then hardly any. So probably a little bit unfortunate to not get more points and very unfortunate that he got an injury last night. It didn't look great. I think there's virtually no chance that he plays the Liverpool game. I'd be very surprised. This now obviously makes Chelsea a weaker side as well. I'm not saying they suddenly get rolled over by every team they play, but it is going to be more difficult without Reece James because he's been so good this year. And to lose Ben Chilwell as well, like that's a huge drop in their defensive quality, right? I think Alonso has been okay. I don't think he's been great. I don't think he's been awful. But he's no Chilwell. And obviously missing Reece James on the right, who's played so many minutes already, is difficult. Now, I don't know exactly what the injury is, but there are kind of some speculation on Twitter that it could be a ripped hamstring, which is going to be pretty bad, I assume, right? It doesn't sound great. So he could be out for a few weeks. The fixtures are bad anyway. Hopefully he's back soon because it's never nice seeing a player get injured for that long. But obviously from an FPL point of view, the fixtures are bad. They got a few blanks anyway, so you've got to sell him, right? There's no reason to keep him. I mean, just quickly, I won't go into my team too much, but I was lining up like this week. So I mean, really, I could just bench James and play Alonso. Obviously, there's loads to think about. Potential doubles, not having much of a bench. Games could get postponed. So maybe I will make that Reece James transfer anyway. But just because he's injured doesn't mean this is the week you have to sell him. In terms of kind of replacements, there's a lot of ways you could go here, and a lot is going to depend on what fixtures get announced and when they get announced, right? So again, I'm gonna cover this in the game week preview, regardless of whether they get. If the double game weeks get announced, I'll 100% do a video on it. If they don't, I'm still going to cover it in the game week preview because I think it's important to know what could happen. And there could be double game weeks in game week 21. Aston Villa, for example, could play there. Leicester maybe as well. And there's probably going to be double game weeks in game week 22. So depending on which players play, will kind of determine who you want to bring in. So just going back to this screen, right, there's no obvious definite answer, okay? So you could look at Spurs players. So Reguilon, for example, they've got a couple of games to rearrange, or 3 games to rearrange already. So they may have a double game week in 22, but probably not 21. But obviously, this week is a good fixture anyway. And then to have a double against Arsenal at home plus one of Burnley, Brighton or Leicester wouldn't be too bad. I've seen some speculation from a few Spurs fans. They don't think that Reguilon's going to necessarily start every single game. I don't know. I'm not so sure about that. But you could go for Dyer instead if you wanted to go for a Spurs player. One player I'm also looking at as well is Cash. I do think Jarrod's done pretty well defensively for Villa. Whether or not they're suddenly a good defence, I'm not quite sure about that yet, but they do have the fixtures. So Brentford away, Man United at home, not great, but again, they've got Burnley at home and Leeds away to rearrange. So if one of those fixtures goes in with Man United at home, you'd probably take it, especially when Villa did so well against Man United in the reverse fixture as well. And then a pretty good fixture run afterwards. So as always with double game weeks, and we'll come on to this when we discuss more about who could play. Yes, it's about getting the players in for the double, but it's even better if they've got good fixtures afterwards so that you're not stuck with players you don't really want. So these fixtures afterwards, Everton, Leeds, Newcastle, Watford, Brighton, Southampton, that's potentially somewhere where you could just keep Cash, right, for kind of like the medium to long term. He's 5 million, so he's not cheap, but I do think he's probably the most attacking from Villa defenders. And Mings is the same price anyway. Cons is only a little bit cheaper. And Matt Target's 4.7. Like Ashley Young could be an option, like because he was playing a bit further forward, but I'm just not sure. Like he's a bit he's got a knock right now anyway, and I just think that Cash is probably a little bit of a better option, even though he's obviously starting further back. Like on the lineup, he's still getting really far forward and he's quite attacking as well. You got Man United defenders possibly, although if you watch the last game against Newcastle, you probably wouldn't want to go there. I do think at some point Dalot misses out and Wan-Bissaka plays. It could be this week against Burnley and then maybe he comes back in against Wolves. But he could be an option. I don't know about Man United defence right now. They just didn't look fantastic. And I think Ranić said, before he talked about scoring more, etc., he did talk about control and making the defence a bit better. And it just hasn't really happened yet. So I don't know if I would go there. Dalot's nice and cheap, so I'm not saying he's a bad option. But I don't know if they're my kind of preferred option right now. The other one to think about as well, if we're selling Salah, right, most of us have probably got Trent and maybe Jota as well. There is an opportunity possibly to add a third Liverpool player. So someone like Robertson, who is suspended this week but will be back for Brentford at home, possibly for a double. So again, you can obviously make that change this week, Reece James to Robertson, but it's something to consider for the future. You could get him back in for double game week against Brentford, then Palace, then Leicester. And to be honest, if something happened where Salah wasn't back, or you maybe wanted to go for a different captaincy for 25 and 26, you could just keep him all the way through until they blank again and then get rid of him. So yes, of course, you'd want Salah back. But if you've got Robertson, maybe it's Jota that goes. Like, there's just loads of things to possibly think about in the future. But in the short term, he looks like pretty good value for 7 million. Obviously, it's a bit more money, so you'll have to figure out how you're going to get to that spot. But Liverpool's fixtures are pretty good. The only kind of counter to that is how good will Liverpool be without Salah, without Mane? Because they do a lot of defending from the front, right? They're pressing, they're helping win the ball back. And that obviously helps out the defenders not having to do all the work. So there are quite a few options for defender changes. Like even Brighton, for example, they've got a few double game weeks to or some fixtures to rearrange. They are quite tough, but again, in the short term, their fixtures are quite good. They've got that blank in game week 24, but if you could bench the player you bring in, then great. And the fixtures around it are just brilliant. Everton, Palace, Leicester, Watford, Burnley, Villa, Newcastle. They're just really good fixtures for a team that are pretty good defensively. They don't let a huge amount of goals in. And if you've not got Sanchez or you don't want to go back to him, then a Brighton defender could also be good. I know I'm giving you a lot of options, right? There's not necessarily a standout replacement. I actually think I'd probably go for Cucurella over Lamptey if I could afford it. I love Lamptey, and he would be the one I'd want. But he has been managed a few times where he's come off a little bit early. Now, you could say that's a good thing because he gets the clean sheet locked in sometimes a bit earlier. But Cucurella has basically started every single game since he came back, and he pretty much plays 90 minutes as well. So he might be worth, because Lamptey has been injury prone in the past. Although, like I said, they are managing him very well. It might be worth paying the extra. But either one of those two, Cucurella or Lamptey, could be good options as well. So in short, Reece James can definitely be sold. There's lots of replacement options depending on who you want to go for, whether you need someone a bit more shorter term or longer term. Right now, if I had to say who I'd go for, it'd probably be Cash, to be honest. And then I might figure out a way to go from Alonso to Robertson to get that third Liverpool player, because obviously I've already sold Salah. But that could change very quickly depending on how the fixtures get announced. But Reece James, that's very long, but he's probably got to be sold. All right, so I'd say some Bernardo Silva owners are probably getting a little bit frustrated. It's now 18 goals that Man City have scored since he last got a return. And I would say that he's probably, I think he's in that weird spot where he's not a bad option at all, right? He's not bad, but it just happens to be better options at Man City for a very similar price. Phil Foden, for example. Although Phil Foden hasn't been playing the last couple, I would hope that he's now back into Pep's good books and will continue to start no matter what the rotation happens. Obviously, this week could be difficult to call again. There's another quick turnaround. I fully expected Gundogan to come in for the last game against Brentford, but he didn't. Surely he comes in against Arsenal. So one of Bernardo Silva or De Bruyne is probably going to have to miss out. I'd be very surprised if Gundogan doesn't start again. But not only do I think there's better Man City options, I think there's probably better options elsewhere. They're a little bit of a cheaper price as well. I don't think anyone's made a mistake by holding on to him. But I think going forward, they haven't got any matches to rearrange. So no double game weeks. Arsenal away, Chelsea at home is not great. Don't get me wrong. The fixtures between 23 and 25 are decent. But if you want a Man City player, I do think that Phil Foden is a better option for not much more money. And also, I would also say that owners have probably, anyone that got on him recently, it's probably been a little bit unfortunate, right? Some people were saying like he's got a different role, and I did say that Kevin De Bruyne kind of does take more of the attacking role when he and someone else is playing central midfield. But Bernardo Silva could have scored against Leeds, right? It was a really great chance. And I know a lot of stuff talked around Bernardo Silva is about stats. So I had a look. For the 5 game weeks where he scored 5 goals, his expected goal involvement was 2.25. So he did overperform a little bit. For the last 5 game weeks where he's only got 1 assist, his expected goal involvement was 1.46, I think. So there wasn't, don't get me wrong, 1.46 is not huge, but the gap between that and the previous 5 game weeks was also not that big. So I think people who had him the previous 5, happy days, right? He probably overperformed a little bit, and now he's probably doing more of what we expect, and he's maybe even underperformed a little bit. That happens sometimes in football, so I think people have been a little bit unfortunate. But to give you an idea, and this is purely from a stats perspective, right? So if you hate stats, fair enough, but I'm just going to talk through them anyway. So his expected goal involvement is 0.42, which again is fine. It's not bad, it's okay, but players who are similar to him, you got Mbeumo at Brentford, he's also 0.42. Gallagher is very similar. Reece James, who's a defender, is similar. Morpay is similar. Che Adams isn't too far behind either. Neither's Richarlison, Martinelli at Arsenal. Most of these players, Adam Armstrong as well, most of these players, Vlasic at West Ham, although to be fair, he hasn't played many games, so we won't include him. But my point is, a lot of the players on this list are just cheaper options. So you can save money and get a very similar player, or you can just go and get Foden from the same team. So to come back around to it, to answer the question, should he be being sold or not? I think there is a risk that he misses out this week. And then it's Chelsea at home, which isn't ideal. They've got no double game weeks. So I think he can be sold. I don't think managers are making a mistake. I think you can fall into a trap where you just hold on to him because you're expecting that 5 goals in 5 games again. And I'm just not sure it's going to happen. If, for whatever reason, you've got other fires to put out, you get to game week 23, he's still playing week in, week out, then you probably do keep him for that fixture run. But right now, if you've got better things to do, I'd probably just sell him. So you don't score, not score, but you don't get 3 assists in one game, come away with a 14-pointer and not get noticed. So 9.4% ownership so far for Bowen. That's only going to go up. He's had 112,000 transfers in already. By the way, don't make your transfers early at the moment. Things are crazy. Not only could we have more postponements, but we could also have double game week announcements, and that could change absolutely everything, including whether or not Bowen is a good option this week. But forgetting about the doubles for a second, they do have a pretty good fixture run. Man United away could be tough, might not be. I mean, West Ham are a good team. They did quite well in the reverse fixture as well. There is potential for West Ham to have a double game week. They got that game against Norwich to rearrange, but it's not necessarily going to be in game week 21 or 22. Again, go and follow Ben Crellin on Twitter if you're not already. He has all this info to hand, and he'll be straight on it when the fixtures do get announced. So potentially, I think he's a good option as long as there's no other double game weeks that come in. I think for 6.6 million, there's not really too many better options right now who have got the stats, who have got form, if you want to call it form, performances, etc., and I've got the fixtures. So ultimately, I think he's a really good option. Crystal Palace away is definitely going to be harder than Watford was, but then he's got to play Watford again soon, and he gets to play Leeds soon. He's also pretty nailed as well. If Antonio gets a rest, it would probably be Bowen up front, and I think showing that he played in the Carabao Cup, and then he played on Boxing Day, and then he played again against Watford. This is a guy who's got kind of energy in the tank and is able to play multiple games. So I would hope that he also plays on kind of the New Year's fixtures as well for game week 21. So yeah, we can probably leave this one quite short. As long as there's no massive double game week stuff that kind of gets in the way of buying Bowen, he's a pretty good option. The fixture run's good stats, good performance, nailed. Looks good. So there we go. That is it for this one. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed it, give it a like and hit that subscribe button. I'll probably release this one a little bit earlier just in case we get double game week news later, so I can put out another video or maybe to do that live stream. We'll see what happens. If I don't do another video today, I will have my team selection video tomorrow once the Man United game has happened. I'm actually on a green arrow, which I'm really happy about, and I've still got David De Gea potentially if he plays and Ronaldo to play as well. So I'm hoping for some big points, but I also hope for some big points from Ronaldo last time and it didn't happen. So let's see if Man United can actually play some football. Thank you for watching. Give it a like, hit subscribe, and I'll see you again soon.